I have a dilemma which I think a lot of you guys watching also have. What club should we have between our longest iron and our 3-wood? Now, to be fair, we do have a few options in this area. We've got a long iron or a driving iron. We've got a hybrid, and we've got an additional fairway wood. Now, all three of these clubs have their own pros and cons list, which I'll go through throughout this video. But I'm going to be testing all three of these clubs here in the simulator and out on the golf course, with the sole goal of providing you guys and myself with all the information we need to decide which of these clubs is best for us and our game. Let's get into it. Now, first things first, let me introduce you to the three clubs that we're going to be testing in this video. First up, we have the Cobra King Utility Iron. As 2 irons go, this one is very forgiving. It does have a steel shaft though, which makes it kind of hard to hit sometimes, but nonetheless, I've had some really good rounds with this club. Next up, we have the TaylorMade SIM Max 3 Hybrid. Hybrids, as a rule, are very forgiving clubs, but this club in particular combines forgiveness and distance, which makes it a great hybrid to have in the bag. The only problem is that sometimes I have a pretty big left miss with it, which is ultimately the reason why I'm doing this video. Finally, we have the TaylorMade Stealth Plus 5-wood. Now, this is a brand new club to me. I've never had a 5-wood in the bag, but I've heard some great things and loads of people now have 5-woods in their bag. Some say the TaylorMade Stealth Plus is a difficult club to tame. I might find this club harder to hit than the other two, but there's only one way to find out. Now, before we head out onto the golf course, I'm going to gather some data here in the simulator. And there's a few important things I want to find out. I want to know how forgiving each one of these clubs are. I want to know how far I'm hitting them. I want to know how high I'm hitting them. And I want to know what their dispersions are like. This is all important information we all need to know to be able to decide which of these golf clubs is best suited for our game and which one of these clubs should go in our bag. So I'm going to hit 14 shots with all three of these clubs, gather all this data, and I'll be back in a second with all of the results. Of course, a big left miss to start. Okay, so data is gathered and I'm going to present you guys with the results in a second. But first, I want to explain a couple of things about this test. I set all three clubs to a static loft of 19 degrees. That's because the hybrid has a loft of 19 degrees and isn't adjustable. So both the 2 iron and the 5-wood was set to 19 degrees. I've hit 14 shots with each club, and that's to represent roughly 14 tee shots in a round of golf. At the end of the day, these three clubs are all options that we can take off the tee. After we've gone through the indoor results, I'll take all three clubs to the course so we can see what they're like outdoors. Now, I'm going to put all this data on screen for you in a second. There's going to be a lot of numbers on this next screen. Don't worry, I'll pick out some highlights for you and summarize everything, but please feel free to pause the next screen and go through the results in your own time. First things first, the forgiveness in strike is clear to see with the hybrid and the 5-wood. Just looking at the smash factor results, it's clear to see how hard these 2 irons are to hit. But I think most of us knew that already. If you're not on your A game, you're likely going to see poor strikes with a 2 iron and a severe loss in ball speed, which is exactly what I'm experiencing today. And with that lower ball speed, the carry number suffers. As you can see, the 2 iron is carrying about 20 yards less than the hybrid and the 5-wood. And that 203 number, to be honest with you, I expect my 5 iron to carry about that far. So yeah, the 2 iron is a hard club to hit. Looking at the carry numbers, the 5-wood is carrying a little bit further because I'm swinging the club a little bit faster. The shaft lengths are usually a little bit longer with fairway woods compared to hybrids, which explains why I'm able to swing that club a little bit faster. And with more ball speed comes more carry, even when the static loft is exactly the same. Interestingly though, the 5-wood is carrying further, but it's also spinning more, which would give us some really good control coming into par 5s with our second shots. And the fact that the 5-wood is flying 10 feet higher in the air also confirms that it will stop quicker than the hybrid, which is really, really useful. You have to remember that all three of these clubs have the exact same loft, so the differences in spin and height are really interesting to see. These last two numbers relate directly to forgiveness. I was missing my target 7 yards left with the 5-wood, 5 yards left with the hybrid, and 2 yards right with the 2-iron. I do struggle with the left miss at the moment, so it was quite refreshing to see a right miss with the 2-iron. But just because the 2-iron is straighter doesn't mean it's more forgiving. So which club is actually the most forgiving club? Well, Golf Shot Analytics provide the perfect number for us to measure forgiveness, and that's percentage error index. The lower this number is, the more forgiving something is, and this data shows that the hybrid was the most forgiving club, narrowly beating the 5-wood, and both these clubs way ahead of the iron. This number takes into account left and right dispersion as well as front and back dispersion. And if we have a look at the dispersion patterns, we can see that it is pretty tight between the 5-wood and the 3 hybrid. You could argue that the 5-wood has a slightly narrower dispersion, but the hybrid looks to have more forgiveness front and back. It's a very tight fight between these two at the moment. And so far, at least in the simulator room, the 2-iron is really struggling. But we don't play golf in the simulator. It's far more important to see how these clubs perform outdoors. Which one of these clubs is going to perform the best out on the course? And more importantly, which one is going to be best out of the rough? I've got 2 tests I want to run while out on the golf course. I want to hit some tee shots with all 3 of these clubs, and I want to hit them all out of the rough. I'm in the rough far more often than I'd like to admit, so this is a really important test to run. This is how the test is going to work. I'm going to hit 5 tee shots on 5 different holes and see which one comes out on top. I'm going to award 1 point for the best ball, 2 points for the second best ball, and 3 points for the worst ball. The lowest overall score will determine the best club. Now, here in the simulator, we've got a perfect environment, no wind and perfect lie. Out there on the golf course, we've got wind to contend with, and one of these clubs might be better than the other 2 in these conditions. Finally, after hitting some tee shots, I'll hit 5 different shots from 5 different rough areas to see which club is best out of the rough. I'm going to use the same scoring system for these 5 shots as well, and by the end of this outdoor test, the club with the lowest points will win this challenge. Let's get into it. Okay, so there you have it. After outdoor testing, it's the hybrid that comes out as the most versatile club out of these three. Off the tee, it came out second best, but when it came to the rough, it really came into its own. The 2-iron, it wasn't great off the tee or out of the rough. I actually think you need a lot more swing speed to justify having a 2-iron in the bag. Swing speed, I do not have. As good as the 5-wood was off the tee, I need this area of the bag to be able to hit a good golf ball out of the rough. I think the 5-wood was probably better out of the rough than I made it look, but without a doubt, the hybrid was the best club out of the long stuff. But you tell me guys, you watched every single one of these shots I did out on the course. Which club do you think was best? Was this a fair test? Get in the comments, let me know what you think. So the begging question, which club should we as average golfers put in the bag? Well, for a kickoff, we definitely shouldn't be putting a 2-iron in the bag. Even pros are starting to move towards hybrids and 5-woods and even 7-woods. If they're not putting 2-irons in the bag anymore, then neither should we. The indoor performance and the outdoor performance of the hybrid and the 5-wood were really similar. I think it's more of a question about which area of your game do you need the club for. If you need a more reliable club off the tee, then the 5-wood is probably your better option. If you find yourself struggling out of the rough, then the hybrid is clearly the better choice. But if you're watching this video because you've got a hybrid in the bag and you're struggling with it, definitely give the 5-wood a go. And vice versa, if you've got a 5-wood in the bag and you think you might need a hybrid, give it a go. That's exactly why I did this video. I've been really struggling with a hybrid and I wanted to see if a 5-wood could help me. And if I get to a point where I need a more reliable club off the tee, then I think the 5-wood is probably my better option. And if you've got a 2-iron in the bag, well, don't. Get yourself one of these. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this whole video. If you're still here and you're not yet subscribed, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. I upload data-driven videos every week designed to help us average golfers learn more about the game in order to get better. And if you like the sound of that and you want to get better at golf, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and I'll see you next week for another video.